A few years ago, if someone asked for the best affordable watch on AliExpress, chances are Addiesdive wouldn't even make the conversation. Collectors were talking about Pagani Design, San Martin, and even Steel Dive, but Addiesdive, not so much. In fact, Addiesdive has become one of the most recommended affordable watch brands in the watch collecting world. So what do you guys think changed? How did a brand that was once largely overlooked become one of the biggest success stories in affordable watches? Today, we're taking a look at the rise of Addiesdive. Hey, there you are, and welcome to My Dude Watch. My name is Jason, and if you've spent any time around affordable watches over the last few years, I'm sure you've noticed something very interesting. Addiesdive did not become popular overnight. In fact, for a long time, they were largely overshadowed by brands like Pagani Design, San Martin, and even Steel Dive. But somewhere along the way, collectors started paying attention, and today, Addiesdive has become one of the most frequently recommended affordable watch brands in the world, not just on Ali. So how did they pull that off? You need to stick around for this. This is going to be fun. You know the deal. Grab a snack, pull up a chair, and let's talk watches. Before we get into today's video, it is time to give away another watch. This is the Addiesdive AD2522, and it can be yours. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel and say, "Hey dude," down in the comments, and you will be entered. That's it, easy peasy. And now let's talk about the rise of Addiesdive. It's easy to forget just how crowded the affordable watch market became during the rise of AliExpress watches. If you remember back then, it felt like new brands were popping up every month. Some disappeared almost as quickly as they arrived. Others managed to build loyal followings and establish themselves as favorites amongst collectors. And if you were paying attention to the watch community a few years ago, a handful of names seemed to dominate nearly every conversation. Pagani Design became known for offering incredible value. Steel Dive built a reputation for rugged dive watches, and they also had excellent lume. San Martin was gaining recognition for delivering premium quality at prices that still felt obtainable. Meanwhile, Addiesdive was mostly sitting on the sidelines, not because their watches were bad, not because collectors disliked them, but because they hadn't yet given the watch buyer a compelling reason to choose them over the competition. In a market filled with sapphire crystal, automatic movement, and dive watches that all look somewhat familiar, simply being good was not enough. So to stand out, a brand needs an identity, and at that point, Addiesdive was still searching for theirs. As the affordable watch market continued to evolve, something interesting started happening. Collectors became more watch-focused and educated. People stopped buying watches simply based on looks. They were learning about movements, they were learning about crystals, they were learning about lume, finishing, bracelets, and overall value. And once that happened, expectations began to change. Collectors started looking for specific features. They wanted sapphire crystal, they wanted reliable automatic movements, they wanted solid bracelets, strong lume, and most importantly, you wanted all these things at a price that felt reasonable. This is where I think Addiesdive made one of their smartest decisions. Rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, they focused on delivering the features collectors were already asking for. Yes, many of their early successes were built around familiar designs and homage watches, but the reality is that collectors were responding to more than just appearance. They were responding to value. For well under $100, buyers could get specifications that only a few years earlier would have cost significantly more, and while other brands were doing similar things, Addiesdive began developing a reputation for consistently delivering a lot of watch for not a lot of money, and collectors were starting to take notice. And for the first time, Addiesdive was no longer just another name on AliExpress. They were becoming a brand people were actually recommending. Every successful watch brand seems to have a moment, a watch that gets people talking, or a stunner that changes how collectors view the company. And for Addiesdive, I think that moment came when they released what many people in the watch community simply refer to as the sundial. Because up until that point, most of the conversations surrounding Addiesdive had centered around value, good specs, good pricing, good overall quality for the money. But the sundial was different. For one of the first time, collectors weren't talking about the watch cost. They were talking about how it looked and how it operated. That texture dial gave the watch a unique personality. Depending on the lighting, it could look almost like windswept sand, stone, or even the surface of another planet, and perhaps most importantly, it felt different. In a market crowded with familiar designs and predictable dials, Addiesdive suddenly had something that stood out, and people took notice. I can remember you started seeing photos of it everywhere, YouTube reviews, Facebook groups, watch forums, Reddit discussions, everywhere. Collectors who had never owned an Addiesdive before were suddenly curious, and many of them discovered something important. This watch wasn't just interesting, it was good. And for a lot of watch guys, that sand dial was their first Addiesdive, and whether they realized it or not, it helped change the perception of the entire brand. Because now Addiesdive wasn't simply competing on price, it was beginning to develop an identity of its own. Of course, one successful watch doesn't build a brand, and if it did, we'd be talking about a lot more one-hit wonders. The real challenge comes after success, and can you build on it? The question is, can you convince collectors that you're more than a single watch or a single good idea? And to Addiesdive's credit, that's exactly what they've done. Over the last few years, we've seen them expand beyond simply offering affordable homage watches and begin developing a broader lineup, really of genuinely interesting pieces. Some collectors gravitated towards models like the AD2030. Others became fans of increasingly diverse dive watch offerings, and more recently, watches like the Addiesdive Puck have shown the brand understands something very important. Collectors don't want just good specs. They want watches that are fun, watches that are interesting. Watches that make you want to look down at your wrist, because at the end of the day, that's what this is really all about. It's not always just about having the most expensive watch or the most technically impressive watch. Sometimes it's simply about finding watches that puts a smile on your face, and that's an area that Addiesdive has become surprisingly good at. They've continued to offer strong value, but they've also started giving collectors watches with a little more personality, a little more character. And that's a big part why so many enthusiasts now recommend this brand to newcomers. So how did Addiesdive get here? How did a brand that was once largely overlooked become one of the most recommended names in affordable watches? Personally, I don't think it's because they make the absolute best watches, and I don't think it's because they are the cheapest. I think Addiesdive succeeds because they understand something a lot of watch brands miss. Most collectors aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for value. They're looking for reliability. They're looking for a watch that feels like they got what they paid for. And for a few years now, Addiesdive has done remarkably good at delivering exactly that. Along with others like Pagani Design, they recognized that enthusiasts wanted sapphire crystal. They wanted dependable automatic movements. They want strong lume. They want solid construction, and they want all of this at a good price. But perhaps even more importantly, Addiesdive eventually realized that specs alone aren't enough. Collectors also want personality. They want watches that feel special. They want watches that stand out from everything else in their watch box. And that's where models like the Sanddial, the AD2030, and the Puck, the Sumo, and others move the brand forward. Because at some point, Addiesdive stopped being a company that sold affordable watches, and they became a company that collectors were actively excited to recommend. And for a watch collector, that's a big difference. Will Addiesdive ever replace brands like San Martin? Probably not. Will they ever compete directly with premium micro brands costing several times more? No, I don't think so. But we have to understand that's not their goal. The goal is to build watches that people enjoy wearing, watches that offer real value, and watches where people like me and you are comfortably recommending them. Well, there you go. A little information about Addiesdive and where they came from and where they are today. We're going to put some links in the description of some of my favorite Addiesdive watches. Just remember, if you go there and check them out and you decide to make a purchase, My Dude Watch may get a small commission, but you don't pay more. Hey, you made it to the end of another video. Thank you for doing that. We appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed what you saw today, please take the time to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It'll only take you a second, but it really does help. All right, let's check the time, and it is time to wrap it up. So we will close the show. My name is Jason with My Dude Watch. We'll do it all again next time. But wait, don't forget, dudes can't be late.